Just before we get started here, there's something that I want you to listen to for a little bit, because this is the one reason I come back to this game every couple of years. Just listen closely. That's gotta be the best song from any soundtrack of any Crash Bandicoot game ever. But anyway, hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I figured I'd do something a little different considering that we've got Crash 4 coming up. I was going to play the demo, but I realized I completely missed the boat on that one. I didn't really want to be following the trend, so I thought I'd check out one of my favorites. Because this is legitimately like my second favorite game in the series outside of Crash 2. And ironically enough, this one is also technically Crash 2. This is Crash Bandicoot 2 N-Tranced on the GBA. Vicarious Visions made this, actually, which is kind of funny because they're the ones who made the Insane Trilogy. They made like 3 games. The third one was shite. It was just a minigame collection. But the 2 that they made that were just like duplicates, quote unquote, of the old Crash formula were all really damn good. And that's basically what they are. They're just Crash Bandicoot games in 2D. And they released exclusively on the GBA, which was weird because at this point it was entirely like a Sony PlayStation thing. And this was also back when the series was kind of getting lambasted because the Wrath of Cortex had just come out on... Yeah, Wrath of Cortex, the 4th one, had just come out on PlayStation 2 and Xbox and GameCube. And it wasn't particularly great. I personally quite liked that game, but a lot of people didn't. And then the series went on to have like some weird crap like Mind Over Mutant and what have you. So this is well back when the series didn't look like it was really going anywhere. But for those of you who still wanted some Crash Bandicoot action, you could still get it in a reasonable way on the GBA. Strangely enough, this is the first game that I know of where Dr. Neo Cortex doesn't play a prominent role. In fact, he doesn't actually show up in the game at all outside some of the wall art. It's a little bit weird, but the plot is pretty basic. It is basically Entropy has a new friend called N-Tranced, and N-Tranced kidnaps all of Crash Bandicoot's family, so it's basically just like Coco and Crunch at this point. And he makes them evil, and he also tries to get Crash, but Crash manages to hang on thanks to the fact that Aku Aku thinks quick and brings out fake Crash. Because, yeah, that's a thing. Actual fake Crash. He's actually kind of great in his boss fight, which I've included in this video. But the gameplay is actually pretty basic. It's the same sort of thing you would expect from any regular Crash Bandicoot game. You go through 2-dimensional levels from side to side. You smash crates, you collect gems, you collect crystals, and of course once you finish these levels you can play them again for relics, although you want to wait for the end of the game for that because you do get that oh so fancy run power up that we all love. There is a new sort of thing called gem shards. So instead of finding like the red and the blue gems and the green gems and having them unlock new paths, you collect gem shards, and once you've collected all the shards, it unlocks the final bonus levels. So, that's nice. It's not too different from how things usually work, and it gives them a reason to put like a gem path into almost every level in the game. And some of them can be quite difficult, because the game is... it's not a slouch. It'll definitely keep you interested for the amount of time that you're playing it. And thankfully, while you're playing it, that gameplay is actually really good. Because these people have obviously been fans of the Crash Bandicoot series for some time, and the games feel really damn close to the originals. The jumping, the spinning, the several abilities you get, including a couple that haven't been seen in the series since. And just the general feel of Crash as a character, it's it's almost perfect. It's legitimately really impressive how well they've done this on the GBA, especially when you look at like the graphical fidelity as well, because it's clear that they've taken like Crash's model from Crash 3 or something and then transmogrified it, or however you want to say it, into 2 dimensions using the same sort of technique they used for, say, Donkey Kong Country. And it absolutely works. Crash absolutely feels like Crash in this game. There are a couple of downsides to the way this works, though. The main one, in my personal opinion, being that Crash is actually kind of slow. And I don't mean that in the, I'm sorry that my kid spat on your shoes, he's a little bit slow. I mean that in the sense that he's kind of slow to react. He jumps a bit heavy. His animation from crawling and crouching specifically all take a fairly long time to get back up from, and sometimes this can cause you to run into trouble, especially if you're like walking off edges and just falling into them because you're just not exactly sure where the edge is just due to the way the game's programmed. It's not that big of a deal, but it can catch you in some levels. There's one level towards the end of the game in particular where I fell off the same ledge like 4 times because the ledge ends just a little bit earlier than it looks, and it got me so many damn times. The difficulty is actually not massively high, but it does give you a bit of a run for your money. Like, I built up a bunch of extra lives earlier on in the game, but by the time I was getting through the bonus levels and the final boss, I was starting to run out of them. So it's definitely not like a slouch. It'll definitely keep you challenged. And another thing that's really impressive about the way the game's presented is its soundtrack. You've already heard the Warp Room theme, which is, again, my favorite track in any Crash game ever. But all the other tracks sound like they've come straight off the PlayStation, given just like a tiny little bit of give. They've done an amazing job with the GBA sound chip here, and you might think it was from a completely different console entirely. It doesn't sound like it came from the Game Boy Advance or just a handheld in general at all. It's really well done. There are a couple of downsides though. My personal one that I usually come up with is the lack of variety. So you see, Game Boy cartridges are kind of limited in size. Crash Bandicoot 2 N-Tranced here is about 8 megabytes. That's pretty small. So there's not that much in the way of variety that you can go for when it comes to a game like this, you know, because you just don't have the room on the cartridge. As a result, the game's only got 3 platforming themes. You've got the Arabic Nights theme, you've got the Aztec theme, which is kind of like a volcano-y sort of thing, and then you've got Egypt. And those are the only themes you get in the 2D platforming. And it's very similar to the previous game on the GBA, which was Crash Bandicoot XS, The Huge Adventure, which only had, what did it have? It only had the sewers, the future, and, oh god, what was the third one? The snow, like Snow Go, etc. from Crash Bandicoot 2. So that's kind of disappointing, especially since Egypt and the Arabic and the Aztec are very similar to each other, especially once you start getting indoors. They do have their enemy sets though, so they do have like, what's it called? They do have all their individual, like, enemies that you have to deal with along the way. They do have their graphical styles and the obstacles you have to deal with, so they're not, like, the same. They are absolutely more like, they're absolutely varied. There's nothing wrong with that. There's just less of the variations. And then you get to the problem that Crash 3 had, where you've got a bunch of, like, really weird mini-games going on that take up a few levels that seem kind of unnecessary. I mean, it's better than Warped. There's no question about it, but you've still got some people's absolute most hated part of these of the later games, which was the Atlas Sphere, which is like the ball that you roll around in. And in this game in particular, there is absolutely no reason to ever not be holding the brake button all the time while you're playing those levels, just because the view is so zoomed in that anything other than brake speed is going to result in you being, it's going to result in you not being able to see what's coming up ahead of you. And it can really suck. There are also 2 levels that have you going into the screen and out of the screen. They feel kind of the same. It's Coco on her jetpack and Crash on his, like, waveboard thing. And there's just a couple of too many levels. Like, I think there's 3 of the levels that have you going around on the wakeboard, and there's 2 of the levels that have you in space, and I really do wish they'd just gone to the effort of cutting them out and putting in the, what's it called? Putting in, like, a space or something, because space was always my favorite theme in these games. Then again, not that big of a deal. The platforming still plays fine. Even then, the atmosphere still plays fine. If it wasn't for the fact that the isometric viewpoint means that you kind of have trouble seeing what can be on certain ramps from time to time, and the whole, you know, it's zoomed in so close that braking is the only reasonable speed you can actually go at. It would actually be a really good implementation. It looks great, and it plays pretty well. It's just the atmosphere sections, which nobody ever really liked, but they had to implement them there anyway, because of course they did. The game does give you some, actually, we'll just put this in the general sort of like level design sense. So here's the thing about some of the level designs. One is that in this game in particular, they do actually give you some like really new power-ups. So they give you like a super slide, which can go really far and break a lot of boxes. And they give you a rocket jump, which will let you go really, really freaking high. But the way that they design the levels is that they don't take into account that you might have these powers later. So they don't build like any obstacles around them that you can come back to later for backtracking. So forbidding the levels that you can go through, but you can only choose to get the gem shard or the box gem. You don't really have to do much backtracking. You can just go through the levels as you unlock them, and you can get basically everything except the relics, which is a little bit disappointing. And yeah, as I said, there are some levels that are like, hey, you have to pick between the gem shard or the box gem. Or sometimes we'll make it kind of complicated so that you have to really hunt around the levels so that you can get every crate for the box gem. It can be a little bit annoying like that. It's not as bad as like some games in the series, but it can just be annoying, I'll just say that. The one last downside is that, admittedly, I used save states and a couple of other like little time-saving tricks here and there. But even then, I managed to finish the game in 2.5 hours. Because it's actually pretty damn short for a Crash Bandicoot game. Now, I didn't take the time to get 100% completion. I missed some box gems. I didn't bother going for any of the relics. So, if you want to add those in, you can easily add like an hour and a half to the playtime easily. And that's like also counting like some of the time saves that I made. There are also some multiplayer parts, but I've never played them, and I probably never will. Mainly because, according to the research I did on the internet, half of them is just games with the atmosphere, and the other half is just time trials, but the other player is kept track of. Although you can't really interact with him in real time, because they need to keep the level data separate because of the way you get, like, the quadrocopter in some... Not the quadrocopter, like the copter thing, the backpack that you get. You get them in later levels, and you need to be able to smash that, so you can't have 2 players running on the same level at the same time. It just kind of goes to shit in that sense, you know? So I'll probably never actually play those, but it's still a nice little benefit to have, and you can even hook this game up to the original game to unlock extra characters for that multiplayer mode, which is a nice touch. But still, it's only going to last you about 3 hours. But at the same time, it's a good 3 hours. Because again, the gameplay, it's down pat. Crash controls really well. Even the atmosphere, despite being annoying, is still one of the better implementations of the concept. And it's got like that same sort of Crash formula that the later games like Wrath of Cortex just didn't get down as well. And it's just really enjoyable as a result, especially back in the day when you didn't really have like good Crash games being made. This was a good little it was a good little like confidence booster that, you know, the original games and their formula was still good, and this game proves it. It's just a bit short. It doesn't have much in the way of variety. And has like little minor issues with like the way levels are designed and the just the general control feel. But they really are minor. Playing this game back to back with Crash Bandicoot XS or The Huge Adventure, depending on what region you're in, is probably a really good idea if you're preparing for Crash Bandicoot 4. Because I've played the demo for Crash Bandicoot 4 and oh god, it's hard. Oh man. Gonna have to get used to that all over again. Yeah, I just stopped there in the footage because I was amazed that I managed to avoid that. Yeah, especially on these isometric levels, the general idea of where you are versus where the game thinks you are, at least on, you know, telling the difference between where you think you are and where the game thinks you are, can be a little bit frightening and can result in situations like that where you think, holy shit, how did I manage to dodge that? And yeah, the presentation is on point. The soundtrack barely sounds like it comes from a Game Boy Advance game at all. It looks great, thanks to the fact that they did the Donkey Kong Country approach and actually pulled it off well. And it just has the same feel of a Crash game. One of the good ones. And considering when this game came out, that was not a foregone conclusion. So, yeah, if you've got a way to play Crash Bandicoot XS and Crash Bandicoot 2 N-Tranced, I highly recommend that you do. They are really good games. Great examples of the formula being transplanted into a handheld system. I'm gonna shut up and let you watch the rest of this footage now. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.
Bandicoot.